Welcome to a demonstration of the eTrack Electronic Hours of Service Automated Driver Daily Log application by ATS. There are two parts to the eTrack system. The first is an administrative application that internal users of the system will use to monitor their fleet of vehicles and drivers as they go through their day. The administrative side of the application consists of a user-friendly interface, an intuitive fleet management feature, comprehensive reporting, and many advanced administrative tools that give the internal users the ability to easily monitor even large fleets of vehicles and employees. The administrative app is scalable in that it can just as easily manage very large motor carriers with multiple locations, many vehicles and employees, as it can smaller single location motor carriers with very few vehicles and employees. Permissions are set up exactly the same way. User permissions can be given to users to specify a single location, or users can be given much more global access, such as administrative access into the application. The driver side of the application has been designed to be extremely user-friendly, allowing the driver to easily navigate through the system to accomplish their required daily activities in the most efficient manner possible. There's a lot of automation built into the application. A driver could essentially go through their entire day without having to change their duty status or complete their daily logs. All of that is done for them in the system based on what the driver is doing as they go through their day. The system also includes a very sophisticated alerting and notification feature that is able to send a few automated alerts to internal users based on what is going on in a driver's day. Before we get into the automated alerts, I would like to explain that the system is trip-centric. What that means is that a vehicle and driver must be placed on a trip in order for the system to track correctly. The trip is actually the tracking mechanism in the system. The system is very flexible with regard to how the trip information gets entered into the system. Administrative or internal users of the system can enter trip information for the drivers. However, drivers can be given the ability to enter trip information for themselves. I will walk through a driver's day, assuming the driver has been given the ability to enter the trip information for themselves, so you can see how easily it is accomplished as a driver goes through their day. Before we go through a driver's day, I will explain the automated alerts that are sent by the system based upon what is happening in a driver's day. The first is an hours of service alert that is triggered by hours of service issues a driver may be facing. Hours of service alerts are a bit different as they are sent in advance of a driver getting into trouble with any hours of service issues. In other words, an alert will be sent back to internal users if the driver is within 1 hour of exceeding any of their hours of service windows. The driver is also given a visual alert on the bottom of their screen. The dashboard is a visual alert for all of the daily and weekly hourly windows that a driver has to keep track of. When a driver is within 1 hour of exceeding any of their hourly windows, the cell in the grid turns yellow as shown on the screen. If a driver goes over their hours, the cell turns red. The system notifies both the admin users of the system as well as the drivers of hours of service violations as they occur. The next type of alert is a failed DVIR, or Daily Vehicle Inspection Report. We'll go over that alert in a few minutes. The last type of alert has to do with the fact that the system is trip-centric. If a vehicle has been in motion for greater than 15 minutes and hasn't been placed on a trip, an alert is sent to internal users stating that the vehicle is moving. This is a catch-all or safety net that steers users of the system to use the system correctly. Drivers are required to do 3 things to ensure that the eTrack application correctly tracks and completes their daily logs, or DDLs. They must create a trip, do 1 pre- and 1 post-trip vehicle inspection per day that they drive. That is all that must be done by the drivers. It is literally that simple. We'll now walk through a driver's day. To begin the driver's day, the daily logs into the system, and we'll notice at the top of the screen that they are currently in the off-duty duty status. They must now create a trip and perform a pre-trip vehicle inspection, or DVIR. The driver must click the Vehicle Inspection button on the main menu of the driver application. The Vehicle Inspection listing grid is now displayed. They will also notice that there are no open trips. When the driver clicks the Add Inspection button at the bottom of the screen, they will then be brought to the trip inspection screen. To create a trip, the only information that is required is the trip type and the vehicle. The trip type is the industry sector that they operate in and is a default that is set up in the system on the administrative side. The trip type not only tells the system what industry sector the driver is driving in, it also places the current or correct DOT rule set in place. The eTrack application has all DOT rule sets for all industry sectors in transportation, all state variances of those rule sets, and all industry sector exception rule sets, such as agriculture and hazmat in California. eTrack also has all of the Canadian and Mexican rule sets, making this app the most complete electronic hours of service application on the market today. The driver is also able to override the trip type default at the time of trip creation. In other words, if a motor carrier is primarily long haul, but travels an occasional short haul trip, the short haul driver can simply select the short haul trip type from the drop-down menu, and the correct short haul rule set will be snapped in place. As mentioned above, the only other information that is required when creating a trip is for the driver to select the vehicle they will be driving during the trip. This can also be defaulted. Up to 2 drivers can be defaulted to a vehicle, which would also carry across when the driver creates a trip. A driver can also enter trailer number, bill of lading numbers, shippers, and commodities if necessary. And if the trip is a team trip, the driver can also select the second driver from the drop-down list. When all necessary trip information has been entered, the driver can simply click the Save button or Save Trip button to save the trip. Although that explanation took several minutes, creating a trip takes a driver only a few seconds to accomplish. At this point, the driver is then placed in the integrated DVIR. To complete the pre-trip vehicle inspection, the driver simply clicks on each of the tabs as they walk around the vehicle, checking anything off that is broken on the vehicle, trailer, or emergency equipment. If the driver checks any of the boxes, that signifies a failed DVIR, and an alert is sent back to the motor carrier. This is the second type of automated alert that the system sends and is received by whomever is designated to receive these alerts at the motor carrier. When finished, the driver simply signs off on the DVR, completing the process, at which time the driver is then placed back into the vehicle inspection listing screen. One thing I failed to mention is that we have 2 processes in the system for accepting odometer readings. The first is a manual system, and this allows the driver to enter the odometer reading at the time of vehicle inspections. If, however, we are able to receive odometer readings directly from the ECM as required in the new rule sets, this is an automated feature, and the driver will not have to enter the odometer reading at the time of vehicle inspection. Once all information has been entered, the driver simply signs off on the vehicle inspection, and as mentioned before, will be placed in the vehicle inspection listing screen. Now that the pre-trip DVIR has been complete, you will now notice that the automation has begun and the driver has now been placed into the on-duty, not driving duty status. Now, when the vehicle begins moving, the driver will be placed into the driving duty status, and when the vehicle stops again, the vehicle the driver will once again be placed into on-duty not driving. At this point, the driver can shut the system off, but keeping the system on will not incur any excessive data charges. In fact, the eTrack application uses very little data during the month. At most, the eTrack uses 100 megabytes, which in terms of data is nominal. The driver should keep the application up at all times so that they could view the tracking grid, which lists time remaining and all the weekly and daily windows the driver has to monitor. This is a very good visual tool for the drivers as they go through their day. At this point, the driver can view and display their logs. They can view the current as well as the last 8 days of logs. The driver can view the HOS recap, both the HOS recap summary as well as the HOS recap detail, which is each individual log, or the totals from each individual log. They can scroll through each daily log, or the numbers that are accumulated on each daily log, by using the previous and next day buttons at the bottom of the screen. The driver can also add comments directly to the current daily log. Anything they enter on this comments screen will be placed directly on the bottom of the current daily log. You'll notice that the comments are placed at the bottom of the grid, at the very bottom of the daily log. This is a very large section, or large field, and the driver can append as they go through their entire day. This comments screen is reset each day, so the driver is only working with the current daily log. If requested, the driver also has the ability to email their logs using the Email Logs feature. The driver only needs to select the set of logs that are being requested, either the current or the last 8 days, and enter the requesting officer's email address. Subject, name of recipient, and recipient control number are all optional fields. When the driver presses the Send Logs button at the bottom of the screen, the logs are placed in a PDF and sent along to the officer. Internal users of the system or administrative users of the systems can also reproduce these sent logs. As mentioned before, the driver also has the ability to manually change their duty status if necessary. If a driver must take an off-duty rest break, such as a long-haul driver, during the day the driver can set their status manually using the Change Duty Status screen. They can set their duty status as required by clicking on the appropriate button. A few advanced features that are available to the driver by using the drop-down menu at the top of the screen include the ability for the driver to display the data feed for their hours of service application if requested by a DOT officer. The data feed proves to the officer that the hours of service application is integrally connected to the ELD system in the cab and is used to create the DDLs. Another advanced feature the driver has available is if the driver has an accident or other issue while on the road and needs to notify the motor carrier quickly, but may not have time for a phone call, the driver has the ability to send an emergency alert. The emergency alert will tell the internal users, the driver who issued the alert, the trip they are on, and the vehicle they are driving. This gives the driver time to take care of whatever they need to before they make a phone call, but still allows the driver to notify the motor carrier quickly that there is a problem on the road. A visual notification tells the driver that the emergency alert has been delivered to the internal users of the system. At the end of the driver's day, the driver simply has to repeat the process of creating a vehicle inspection to perform the post-trip inspection. Once again, the driver simply checks any boxes that represent anything that is broken on the vehicle, the trailer, or the emergency equipment, then signs off on the post-trip DVIR. Inspection notes can also be added by the driver, and these will be visible to the internal users of the system. Any checked boxes on the DVIR will also signify a failed inspection, the same as it would during a pre-trip inspection, and an alert will be sent back to the motor carrier. Once the post-trip vehicle inspection has been signed off on, the driver's trip will then be closed, and the driver will be placed into the off-duty duty status. The driver can now sign out of the application as their day is officially over. As you can see, the driver's side application is extremely user-friendly as well as powerful. Drivers typically have very easy time learning the application and transitioning over to the eTrack application. On the administrative part of the application, there are some setup screens, and although I am not going to cover the operational aspects of setting the system up, I will show a few features on some of the setup screens. On the employee management screen, or employee maintenance screen, the employee information not only gets entered, but this is where system alerting is set up. The vehicle management screen is where GPS units are attached to the vehicles, and is also where up to 2 drivers can be defaulted to a vehicle, as mentioned before. The trip screen is where most internal users will spend their day. This is where internal users of the system can add or edit trips for their drivers. It is also where internal users can monitor an entire fleet of vehicles and drivers. Open trips can be viewed, drivers that are on the trips, vehicles used on the trip, as well as any information. Any inspections, any failed inspections can also be viewed. All from this one feature, making it very easy to monitor even the largest of fleets, all from this one feature. The reporting feature is very intuitive. There are many listing reports, of course, but the system is also comprised of many much more comprehensive reports, such as the trip report, driver availability, and driver dashboard reports. Hours of service reports include the ability to print driver logs, HOS recaps, and an HOS audit, which is a feature that audits the motor carrier's driver logs between any time frame. This is a very useful feature, as it is as complete as a DOT audit and will kick out any red flags that would be raised during a DOT audit. There is also a feature that allows internal users of the system to make changes to the driver logs. This is a very powerful feature. Not only makes corrections to the log being worked on, but also rebuilds the log set for every day after the one being changed. A very powerful and useful feature. Lastly, as I mentioned before, there are several defaults that can be set up in the system. The first is the driving rule. This is the driver's weekly window. A driver can have different driving rule than is set up in the default settings. The system is very flexible that way. The default trip type can also be set but both administrators and drivers have the ability to override the trip type and snap another rule set into place at the time of trip creation, as I have mentioned before. And lastly, the amount of advance notification for hours of service alerts can also be set anywhere from an hour to 6 hours, depending on the internal operations of the motor carrier. This concludes the eTrack Electronic Hours of Service application demo. Thank you for taking the time to view our demo, and if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call or visit our website at atsfleettracking.com.